This report does not seek to fascinate, it seeks to understand. Understanding is not excusing, it is refusing to let it happen again in the shadows.
A quiet evening at a neighborhood tavern, the murmur of casual conversation blending with the clinking of glasses. An unassuming man offers a polite smile and a friendly drink. He blends seamlessly into the background, presenting himself as just another face seeking companionship. But beneath this reassuring mask of normalcy lies a terrifying reality. The drinks are drugged. 17 victims vanished into the shadows of Wisconsin over a period of 13 years. A chilling sequence of homicides went completely undetected by those protecting the local community. What does it take for an ordinary person to become a predator, and how does society fail to see it? This vital inquiry drives our forensic investigation. Throughout this analysis, we will refer to our subject as the Pale Alchemist. He operated with a calculated methodology, leaving a permanent trail of profound loss behind him. The profile maintained an apartment that appeared entirely unremarkable to any casual observer. Yet, the hidden reality within those walls would eventually shock an entire nation. Plea after plea from concerned neighbors echoed through the night, only to be repeatedly dismissed. The subject thrived in the blind spots created by a flawed systemic response. When the truth finally surfaced, the immense scale of the crimes defied all rational comprehension. The subsequent investigation forced a fractured community to confront his quiet deception. The justice system was left grappling with a dense web of psychological manipulation. The trial sought to explain how the subject masked his darkness behind a calm facade. We must carefully examine the fractured environment that allowed the subject to hunt in plain sight. Unraveling this tragic timeline is essential to honoring the innocent victims. This invisibility was no accident. It was a carefully constructed psychological shield. By presenting a courteous demeanor, the subject successfully deflected any potential scrutiny from his community. The subject operated with an acute understanding of societal expectations. He learned early that a calm, submissive posture could mask the profound emotional disturbance boiling beneath his surface. His deception relied heavily on the manipulation of perception. He offered disarming smiles and logical excuses, exploiting the natural human tendency to trust a reassuring, ordinary narrative. When neighbors noticed strange odors, he calmly blamed a broken freezer or dead tropical fish. The profile weaponized his mundane existence, turning ordinary routines into perfect psychological camouflage. The authorities and his peers failed to see through the facade because he embodied their idea of normalcy. They looked at him and saw only a quiet citizen. Behind closed doors, this polite neighbor vanished. Yet in public, he maintained his civilian disguise effortlessly, walking the streets as a phantom hidden within the bright light. The mask was flawless, but it required immense cognitive energy to sustain. Slowly, the boundaries separating his public persona from his hidden reality started to inevitably crumble. The subject's early environment was deeply fractured by severe domestic volatility. Parental neglect and profound emotional instability within the home created a pervasive, chilling sense of isolation. A major medical procedure at age 4 acted as a developmental pivot. A once energetic child became profoundly withdrawn, retreating entirely into a silent, solitary inner world. Seeking connection, the profile developed an intense preoccupation with animal remains. He began collecting discarded bones, attempting to comprehend the fragile, silent mechanics of anatomy and existence. An absent parental figure inadvertently nurtured this dark curiosity, teaching the subject how to chemically preserve skeletal fragments. This clinical instruction transformed a disturbing hobby into methodical obsession. Throughout adolescence, the subject remained a complete social outcast. He masked his severe internal anxiety and suppressed identity through heavy alcohol consumption, becoming a phantom among his peers. The ultimate psychological fracture occurred during a bitter family dissolution. Left entirely abandoned in an empty house, his fragile connection to society and morality was completely severed. Consumed by an intense, pathological fear of abandonment, the profile sought absolute control. He needed to ensure that his future companions would never possess the agency to leave. Isolated and completely unanchored, the internal mechanics of a predator were fully assembled. Now that we understand what broke him, what happened when he finally crossed the fatal line? The profile operated with a chillingly calculated modus operandi. His repeatable method relied on identifying isolated individuals within marginalized communities, deliberately exploiting their profound social vulnerability. He initiated contact using polite conversation, leveraging a calm demeanor to invite them into his private domain. Promises of financial compensation or quiet companionship cemented the deception. Once inside, the subject utilized chemical subjugation. By secretly lacing beverages with heavy sedatives, he neutralized any resistance, ensuring total physical dominance without triggering a chaotic struggle. But a profiler must distinguish this practical methodology from his psychological signature. While his methods facilitated the crimes, his signature revealed a deep pathological compulsion for absolute possession. The fatal acts themselves were merely a necessary mechanism. The true psychological goal was to permanently tether these individuals to his existence, entirely eradicating his fear of abandonment. He methodically retained physical tokens of the deceased. These artifacts were meticulously preserved to construct a private sanctuary, a physical manifestation of his need for eternal companionship. As his internal emotional voids expanded, this psychological compulsion escalated into a clinical frenzy. The carefully maintained facade began to crack under the weight of his obsessive rituals. The predator had successfully operated within the blind spots of the city for years. However, even the most meticulous systems of deception will eventually break down. The turning point arrived when a targeted individual managed to break free from his isolated captivity. Fleeing into the night, the survivor sought immediate help from authorities. A routine patrol unit was flagged down by the desperate man. The officers listened to a chilling account of a calm stranger harboring a profound, hidden danger. With a single handcuff still attached to his wrist, the survivor guided law enforcement back to the precise location. The investigation was now closing in rapidly. Law enforcement approached the profile's apartment to investigate the alarming claims. The subject greeted them with his characteristic polite demeanor, attempting to weave another deceptive narrative. However, the illusion of normalcy dissolved as investigators stepped inside. The environment felt meticulously sterile, yet an oppressive, lingering tension filled the heavy air of the residence. An open drawer exposed the stark, undeniable truth. Investigators discovered a collection of photographs detailing the true extent of the subject's deeply concealed, methodical criminal activities. The visual evidence immediately confirmed the survivor's terrifying testimony. The authorities realized they had stumbled into the private sanctuary of an incredibly dangerous and prolific predator. Realizing his hidden world was breached, the profile violently resisted. He fought the officers but was quickly overpowered. The long-standing reign of quiet terror was abruptly halted. The subsequent forensic search of the premises revealed an overwhelming scale of tragedy. The systemic failure that had shielded him was replaced by intense investigative scrutiny. Pinned to the floor, the subject surrendered to the institutional pressure. He uttered a chilling admission, fully acknowledging the immense gravity of his newly discovered actions. The predator was finally in custody, securely removed from the streets. But the arrest is merely the beginning of the complex psychological inquiry that comes next. The subject entered the courtroom not to contest guilt, but to argue insanity. He sat silently, an emotionless phantom calmly observing his own intense legal reckoning. The psychological defense ultimately failed. A jury rejected the plea, ruling him completely sane and responsible. He received multiple consecutive life sentences, ensuring permanent institutional confinement. Incarceration provided no sanctuary. His deeply disturbing behavior behind bars provoked fatal retaliation from a fellow inmate. A sudden attack abruptly ended his dark, isolated timeline, yet the profound shadow of his actions lingered. The immense scale of the crimes shattered a community, exposing how marginalized individuals were tragically and systematically ignored. Grieving families demanded accountability. The subsequent inquiry revealed profound institutional blindness, forcing law enforcement to confront the devastating socioeconomic biases that allowed the predator to thrive. This unprecedented tragedy forced a massive paradigm shift in forensic psychology. Profilers had to critically redefine their understanding of organized deception and predatory urban psychological camouflage. The profile became a chilling benchmark in behavioral science. We must study his clinical methods not with morbid fascination, but to accurately recognize subtle, fatal warnings. Every fractured piece of this complex psychological puzzle has now been meticulously gathered. We finally possess all the critical elements required to classify this terrifying profile.
The mystery is over. The trump card is on the table. So, did you recognize him?
The individual we have been analyzing is Jeffrey Dahmer, historically branded by the press and public as the Milwaukee cannibal. Within our forensic framework, we designate this profile as the Pale Alchemist. This alias reflects his clinical, detached methodology and his pathological drive to chemically alter and preserve his victims. Like a dark alchemist attempting to transmute matter, he sought to transform human connection into permanent, compliant possession through systematic experimentation. To fully deconstruct the psychological mechanics of his operations, we will now evaluate his case using the Pentagon of Evil framework. Over a highly active period spanning from 1978 to 1991, Dahmer claimed exactly 17 victims. His psychological profile is chillingly defined by his unnerving, glassy stare, a physical manifestation of his profound emotional void, and his methodical compulsion to retain physical souvenirs from his crime scenes to build a macabre private sanctuary. Premeditation, 8 out of 10. Jeffrey Dahmer exhibited a high degree of calculation in his targeting and execution. He meticulously planned his interactions, exclusively targeting vulnerable, marginalized individuals he met at local establishments. He utilized specific chemical sedatives to incapacitate his targets quietly, ensuring no physical struggle would alert neighbors or authorities. His ability to maintain a facade of normalcy, hold down employment, and seamlessly navigate police inquiries demonstrates a chillingly organized approach to his predatory behavior. Signature, 9 out of 10. The psychological compulsion driving Dahmer went far beyond the act of the homicide itself. His signature was rooted in a pathological fear of abandonment, manifesting as a need for absolute possession. He conducted crude, clinical experiments to create compliant companions and systematically preserved physical tokens, such as skeletal remains, to construct a private psychological shrine. These post-mortem rituals were entirely unnecessary to the crimes, but were the absolute core of his psychological motivation. Mobility, 3 out of 10. Unlike nomadic predators who traverse state lines to evade detection, Dahmer's operational zone was remarkably static. Aside from his very first crime in Ohio, almost all of his activity was geographically confined to a tight radius within Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He relied heavily on drawing individuals back to his own controlled environment, specifically his grandmother's residence and later his own apartment. His lack of vehicular mobility further restricted his hunting grounds to familiar, highly localized urban areas. Resistance, 7 out of 10. Dahmer displayed a significant ability to resist external pressure and deflect investigative scrutiny. When confronted by suspicious neighbors, building management, and even law enforcement, he seamlessly deployed his polite, unassuming demeanor to talk his way out of trouble. His most striking display of resistance occurred when he successfully convinced police officers to ignore concerned bystanders and return a fleeing victim directly to his custody. He manipulated societal biases to effectively shield his hidden reality. Impact, 9 out of 10. The aftermath of Dahmer's crimes sent massive shockwaves through the cultural and institutional landscape. The discovery of his sanctuary devastated the local community and exposed profound systemic failures and biases within law enforcement. His case permanently altered forensic psychology, forcing a reevaluation of how organized deception operates in plain sight. Decades later, his profile remains a chilling cultural touchstone, continually reminding society of the devastating consequences when marginalized victims are ignored by the systems meant to protect them. Final score, 36 out of 50. Jeffrey Dahmer's profile yields a total of 36 out of 50. This score reflects a highly organized, psychologically complex predator whose need for possession completely overrode his humanity. So, what does it take for an ordinary person to become a predator? And how does society fail to see it? It takes a profound psychological fracture, an intense fear of isolation, and a cold, methodical process. Society fails to see it because predators like Dahmer weaponize our own systemic biases and exploit our natural inclination to trust a polite, ordinary facade, allowing them to hide their darkness in plain sight.
Some monsters are born in the shadows. Others are the shadow itself. The verdict is etched in stone, but make no mistake, evil never stops. It simply changes its face. Many more monsters await dissection on this channel. Stay vigilant. Case closed.